Hi boys and girls, we're back for our second week of ELA and our YouTube channel. This time we're going to be talking about theme. Last week was main idea, this week is theme. The story that we're going to be doing, or the text we're going to be doing, has to do with the Civil War and the Underground Railroad. So before we get into all of that, let's review what theme is. Theme is the message, the moral or the lesson of a story. Most often you need to use your schema and clues in the story, and it equals putting the pieces together like a puzzle. You're inferring what's going on in that story. Clues to look for. What's the setting like? What are the events going on in your story, especially with your character? And one of the main questions you can ask yourself to help you with theme is, what did the characters learn? What did that character learn? What lesson did they learn? So let's go ahead and go to our story. Before we get started, let's talk about two big vocabulary words that are going to be in our story. One of them is slavery. Slavery is the act of owning another person to perform a service for them for free. Our other word is constellation. Constellation is a group of stars that form a picture. One of the most famous constellations is the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper.
Our text today is called The Sign by Laura Rang. Laura Rang has written for Highlights. In this short story, Jess and his mother help Ori, a boy escaping slavery. As you read, take notes on Jess and Ori's relationship. Jess tried to steady his trembling legs. It wasn't easy to do with the strangers in the house. They were searching every room and surrounding Ma, who stood there bravely. "A slave?" she was saying. "We have no slaves on our farm." "We're looking for a runaway named Orion," said a bearded man. "If you're hiding my slave—" Jess didn't want to hear more. Ma had helped many slaves on their way to freedom. She was an expert at handling men like these. Jess slipped outdoors. In the distance, the river roared in the night. A light flickered on its bank. Jess ran toward it and gasped, "Ori, they're searching for you!" In the glow of the fire, Jess saw Ori wince. Then, with his good arm, Ori grabbed a pail of water and put out the flames. "Their search won't be easy." "The men won't find you," Jess said firmly. "Ma told me what to do. I'll row you across the river. Then you go to the farm Mom told you about. They'll help you from there." Ori shook his head. "Taking the boat wouldn't be safe. The men will probably look here soon. They'd spot us in the water." Ori crawled into the pit that he had dug, where he had slept the past few nights. He came out with a bundle and tied it to his belt with a bandana. He stuck a hunting knife in his sheath and then took a step toward the river. Jess went cold as he looked across the raging river's expanse. "Swimming's too dangerous." Ori chuckled softly. "I'm not afraid of that river. I'll be fine." Jess gulped. How could Ori swim with a wounded arm? 6 days ago, Ori had staggered into their yard, hurt from his journey. Ma had treated his arm, but it still hadn't healed completely. "Even if you make it across, will you be able to find the farm in the dark?" asked Jess. "Look at the sky," Ori said gently. "All the stars are out. I reckon they'll guide me safely." Jess tilted his head to the stars. He and Ori had loved studying during their brief friendship. Jess had told Ori their names and drawn the constellations for him. But it was Ori who had brought the stars to life. He made up stories about the dancing 7 sisters, the rumbling big bear, and the laughing little bear. "The stars will guide me," Ori repeated. "When I make it to the opposite bank, I'll leave a sign for you. Then you'll know I'm safe." "What kind of sign?" "While I'll—" Ori stopped at the sound of a shout. "They're on their way," he whispered. Jess felt a warm hand on his shoulder. Seconds later, Ori was gone. Ori had been his friend for 6 days of his life. He would miss him all the rest of it. "You've got to be safe, Ori," he thought. "If you can just swim the river, you can make it to the north, too." The roaring river filled Jess's dreams that night. He slept fitfully, but in the morning the river had quieted. Ma followed Jess to the boat. Together they rowed across the water. The men might come back, said Ma. It doesn't matter, said Jess. Ori must be far away by now, and when we see his sign on the bank, at least we'll know that he made it across the river. But as they docked, Ma gasped. Tangled in some riverbank weeds was a bandana. Jess gritted his teeth. Ori's all right. The sign has to be here. Jess stumbled through the brush, searching everywhere. He paused at a tree to study some marks on its trunk. Had Ori made them with his knife? But Ma shook her head. Just woodpeckers, Jess. Ma was blinking back tears as they rowed home. Jess stared silently at the shoreline ahead. He tried not to look at the mighty river. He tried not to think of Ori lost in its depths. When they got to the farm, Jess went to work in the yard. He chopped wood until his hands were blistered and burning. Then he dropped to the ground for a rest. The sky above Jess was blue, but in his mind it was night again, with the stars shining. Ori's words came back. The stars will guide me. I'll leave a sign. A terrible sadness filled Jess, but as he stared upward, a pattern came to mind. Like pieces of a puzzle, the pattern clicked into place. Ma! Shouted Jess, trembling with joy. He jumped up and ran into the house. Ori's name, Ma! Remember what it's short for? Ma said softly, Orion. Jess grabbed a slate and drew a pattern on it. Those marks on the tree weren't for woodpeckers. They're the shape of a constellation. Jess held out the slate. The stars of Orion, Ma. Ori made them. He's safe. Ma gave a happy cry, hugged Jess, and from the open door came the sound of the rushing river. To Jess, it sounded just like Ori's soft chuckle. Yeah. Okay, boys and girls, thinking about theme, and remember, theme is the message of the story. And when you're thinking of theme, always ask yourself, what did the character learn? So our first question is, which sentence describes the theme of the short story? A, helping others in need is important, even if it's a risk to your own safety. B, it's important to pay attention to signs from nature. C, good things happen to those who help others. Or D, it's important to remain positive, even during difficult times. Now, boys and girls, we need you to either comment on the Facebook page in the comment section there, or please comment on the Remind app. Okay, boys and girls, we're also going to talk about character and see what kind of a character does our main character Jess have. So this is a part A, part B question. And so remember, when we're answering part A, part B questions, part B goes to part A. You do not go back into the story for part B. Part A, which sentence describes Jess? A, Jess is fearless and willing to do anything to help others. B, Jess is a nervous kid who always worries that the worst will happen. C, Jess is a caring kid who values his family over everything else. D, Jess is kind and cares about the well-being of his friend Ori. Part B. Remember, part B goes with your question here in part A. Part B. Which quote from the text best supports the answer to part A? A. Jess tried to steady his trembling legs. It wasn't easy to do with the strangers in the house. B. A light flickered on his bank. Jess ran toward it and gasped, Ori, they're searching for you. C. Ori had been his friend for 6 days of his life. He would miss him all the rest of it. You've got to be safe, Ori, he thought. D. Ma! Shouted Jess, trembling with joy. He jumped up and ran into the house. Okay, boys and girls, what we would like for you to do, and let me say this again, is make sure you do your comments with either on the Facebook page underneath our YouTube video or in the Remind app. You may put all your answers in one comment, whether it be on the Facebook page or on the Remind app. Boys and girls, we're going to talk about thinking a little bit deeper about our character. And our writing prompt, which you can easily just write it out on a little piece of paper, have mom take a picture of it, and she can send it through the Remind app. In the context of the story, thinking about just the story, what obstacles does Ori have to overcome to achieve freedom? What traits do you think are important for someone to have in order to overcome difficult challenges? Describe a time when you overcame something difficult. Now, I'm going to end on this last note. Boys and girls, I have some websites here to talk to you about. First one is a YouTube about slavery. It is Studies Weekly. That gives you a little brief understanding what slavery is. Another one is about how slavery begins. Where did it begin and how did slavery become a big part of the United States in our early beginnings? And another one is plantation life. What was it like for the slaves on a plantation? What were their roles? And then the last one is Brain Pop, going to slavery. It's www.brainpop.com. Log in, lock, password, learn. Boys and girls, we really enjoyed our time with you today. Miss Bledsoe is here. Say hi, Miss Bledsoe.
Hello.
She is our cameraman. Boys and girls, we look forward to being back with you next week. Remember, put your comments in the Facebook post underneath our YouTube video, or in the Remind app. Mom can take a picture of it and send it through the Remind app. This way we know what you're doing, and we can't wait till we see you again. Have fun, and we'll talk to you soon.